Live here from the Four Corners Project studio in Beit Shemesh, Israel. I'm Lenny Solomon, and we have a great show for you guys today. It is interview week, interview night. One out of every three shows that I do during the week is an interview, and we have one of the great. It's the mystery guest, as he, as we have billed him, but he is no mystery guest, ladies and gentlemen. He is the godfather of Jewish rock. Now, you know, a lot of people say, well, let me introduce you first. Ladies and gentlemen, the head of the Diaspora Yeshiva Band and the godfather of Jewish rock and roll, Avraham Rosenblum. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Lenny. Thank you. Hi, everybody. How are you?
All right. And they all say yes. They all say hello. So I must tell you that when you wrote to me, and we've been friends for a long time, and you are a big influence of mine. I mean, I'm going to start off the show by saying right away, 1981, 80, 82, I don't remember what year it was. I was in Queens College, modern Orthodox Jew from Queens, and the Diaspora Yeshiva Band came to Queens College, and they played on the fourth floor of the Hillel Student Union building in Queens College. And, you know, that I don't remember. You know, it was a great show. What can I say? It was a great show. We're gonna talk about the impact of the Diaspora Yeshiva Band, and your impact, and you know how you got to where you got to. But before we do that, let's go back a little bit in time and talk about the state of Jewish music in 1975 when you came onto the scene.
It was basically the state of mediocrity is really what it was.
Well, there was no Jewish rock and roll. That's really the point, right? I mean,
and even the mainstream Jewish music had become very stale by that point. Also, I mean, there was a little bit of movement, like in the folk, the folk part of it a bit, but certainly not in rock and roll. And
right.
It was a wedding band music, and where the featured instrument was still clarinet. It was clarinet.
It was wedding band music. It was. I mean, and I grew up on that, and I really did like it. I must tell you, I liked all music. I liked Hasidic music, but I also liked rock music. But when you guys came onto the scene, it was like whoosh. It was a breath of fresh air. It was, oh my gosh, that we can do this. There is an industry, and it's very, very funny because people always ask me, they say, what industry, what do you do? I go, well, I'm a Jewish rock and roller. And they say, they laugh.
From that you can make a living.
Well, how many times did you get asked that question?
More than I can count.
Me too. That was the number one question. That was the number one. You make a living from this? Question number one. Question two, do you get permission for these parodies? That was question number two.
Yeah, everybody wants to know, what's the meat cost on your sandwich when it's like. So Jackie Mason used to talk about that kind of stuff all the time. Every Jew wants to know how much did that cost you?
He did. Jackie Mason spoke a lot. He was so politically incorrect, but very, very funny. Very funny.
Absolutely. So.
Okay, so back to Jewish rock and roll, of which there was no industry. You were the first, and that's why I call you the godfather of Jewish rock and roll. So let's now go into let's tell the audience, I'm going to ask you to tell the audience a little bit about your growing up, where you grew up, and how you managed to become the Diaspora Yeshiva Band.
Well, let's go back to around 1967, 66, 67. And by that point, I was already a few years into, the Beatles and all the other groups. And I had discovered Bob Dylan around that time. Also, Johnny Cash a little bit. All those iconic, different songwriters and singers. As far as the bands were concerned, so the band, was really the strongest influence on me at the time.
Wow.
But I had a band with a seventh grade classmate of mine named Frank Stallone, and Frank and I had the first really great band that we started in Philly at the time in '67.
This is the Frank Stallone.
Yeah, we've been best friends for God, how many years now? But since we're 12, so it's a
That's
long time.
crazy. That's crazy.
And it's funny. I just spoke to him about an hour ago. We check in with each other every once in a while. He lives out in Westwood, and in Hollywood. So
Wow.
he's still a great guy. Great guy. As a matter of fact, not to be a big self promoter, but there's a bio on Amazon Prime called Stallone Frank. That is, which is all about Frank and the fact that he grew up as Sylvester Stallone's brother, but they used to call him Rocky's brother, which used to irk him. So it's all about being really talented on his own and coming out from underneath his brother's shadow. And
Yep.
it's a great flick. You should see it. Stallone Frank that is, and I've got a little piece in there too. So
Really? That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
So
Shot
so
right here. Shot.
so you and Frank Stallone have this band in the 7th grade.
And it's called, well, we met in 7th grade, but when we were 16, 17, we ran into each other in a music store in downtown Philly. And we immediately, like, see, I used to be the straight guy. I was like the president of the school, Mr. Joe with the tie and jacket every day. And Frank was a rowdy. And we used to get on each other's nerves constantly. He was always like picking on me if I wasn't wearing the right kind of button-down shirt, and all that kind of stuff. Because, he would call me Jive because I would wear like open collars. Anyway, so
That's funny.
So Frank and I were like not rivals, but just like we used to like to get on each other's nerves. And then a few years later, we meet at this music store in downtown Philly, and he's wearing like fringy buckskin, jackets, and his hair is down to here, and my hair was down to there, and I'm wearing beads, and he's carrying a guitar case, and I'm carrying a guitar case, and we looked at each other and said, "All right, we got to start a band, right?" So within 2 months, and a couple of permutations later, we had a band that we called Valentine, and Valentine went through 4 or 5 different incarnations, but we were the original Valentine. We used to play at the Second Fret, which was a very famous folk rock club in Philly, and also at the Electric Factory, which was a very, very well-known place.
Now, what year is this?
So we're talking 60, most of the activity was late 67, 68.
Wow. So now, I mean, obviously, I'm going to ask the obvious question, which is that's not far from the Woodstock era. Were you one of the attendees or performers at Woodstock?
So what happened that summer in 1969, the band broke up. I broke up with my high school girlfriend. It was like,
right.
But I was more upset about the band breaking up.
Well, that's a guy thing,
And so I decided that I was just going to check out on my usual haunts and hangouts. And I was on my way to Montreal. I was driving a little Austin America, little brown Austin America at the time. And I had my guitars and my luggage and whatever else in there. I was heading for Montreal. I had some acquaintances I knew up there. Anyway, so I pick up a hitchhiker somewhere near the old Yankee Stadium, in Yonkers.
Yeah.
And he looks like me. His hair's like down to here also. And so as we're driving up, I start to tell him about my band breaking up and my high school. I was fetching out loud. And the guy says to me, why don't you come up to Woodstock and chill out for a couple of days? You'll have a great time. So I said, oh, okay, fine. So we proceeded to drive up and get up to 17B, and there was no traffic yet. It was early Thursday. But by Thursday night already, it was unbelievable. And Friday was insane. It was gridlocked for 40 miles in every direction.
Wow.
It was amazing. But
so anyway, you actually were at Woodstock. You were.
Oh, was I there? As a matter of fact, I was so there that I don't remember half of it.
My gosh, it's unbelievable. I actually met somebody else that was there.
Who's that?
It was a lady, and I was actually paying a shiva call in Israel. You wouldn't believe this, right? I'm paying a shiva call in Israel, and the lady sitting next to me, she's married to a South African guy, and she says to me, I was at Woodstock, and she starts telling me the story. And I said, wow.
Well, me and 500,000 other people, right? So it's
yeah.
Right. But,
no, of course, in 69, I'm 8 years old, so I didn't know from Woodstock.
Right, I was 18. I was on my way towards 19 in September.
Wow.
Which I found out later. But see, what was really interesting about the whole thing was, number one, there were no fights. Everybody was really totally into the peace thing at the time. and 500,000 people, and nobody even got a black eye. I mean, it's amazing. It's just totally amazing.
Wow. And did you actually hear the music from where you were?
Yeah. The sound system was huge. I mean, if you've ever seen the movie, they had huge speakers up on these towers, and except when it stormed a bit, and they had to cover them up and turn everything off because it was there was lightning. So that was late.
So
That was like later Saturday night.
so at this point you don't know that you're going to be a musician, or did you?
Well, I was in bands from the age of 14, to 13
Okay.
actually.
Yeah.
So as far as my calling as a musician was concerned, that was well established already. I
Wow.
wanted to be a songwriter and a performer, and I was heading in that direction.
Wow. That's amazing. Okay. So you detour to Woodstock, and from there, what happens? How do you get to Israel?
Well, the first thing I ran into at Woodstock was some Hare Krishna guys that were giving out peacock feathers. that was my first like real spiritual confrontation. That was after Satchidananda, gave the opening benediction there, and the Hare Krishnas didn't like him. So they were walking around the crowd yelling bogus, bogus. Anyway, that's like Litvaks and Hasidim. That's a whole other thing, right? So so then by Saturday night, this is Thursday, by Motzi Shabbos, which again I discovered later. But I was wet and I was cold and I think I caught something, and so I had a fever, and I decided I got to get out of there. So I finally dug my way out, and some helpful hippies helped me get my car out of the mud. I was parked between the stage and Shari Yosef Bungalow Colony.
Really?
I didn't know it was Shari Yosef Bungalow Colony in those days, but that's where I was parked because I got there early. So there was a field in between the bungalow colony and the concert grounds, which was right next to the stage, really. So I found my car. I thought it was like 10 miles away, but it was really only like right next door over there. And I got my car. I go back to 17B, and I decide it's midnight Saturday night, mind you, and I decide I'm going to continue on to Montreal, like 12 o'clock midnight. Who does that? Then I noticed that the white line in the road was doing a snake dance.
Oh my God.
So I decided maybe it's not such a good idea after all. And I really wasn't feeling well. So I found my way back to Monticello General Hospital. So I went and I said, I don't feel well. They said, take a seat in the waiting room. And I fell asleep on the chair. And I woke up at 9 o'clock in the morning as people were coming in. And I noticed that right directly across from me are three yeshiva type guys, guys with yarmulkes and white shirts, black pants, tzitzis hanging out. And I don't know, again, I don't know a chassid from a Sephardi, I don't know about these things yet. But I caught the eye of one of these guys, and I grew up speaking Yiddish, by the way. Not everybody knows that. So, because my parents were, survivors. Anyway. So I catch the eye of this one guy and I say, hey, was machst du? Manishma, how are you? He looks at me because my hair's down to here and I'm covered with mud, and my jeans were more holes than they were material, so he looks at me, he answers me back in Yiddish. He says, what are you doing here? I said, I came to Woodstock. He said, what are you looking for in Woodstock? I said, it was really spiritual, peace, love, understanding, nobody's fighting. And I immediately, put up the old defensive line. What do we need a building for? You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, except to put somebody's name on, you know what I mean?
Right.
So he says to me, look, I'd love to talk to you. He writes me down an address and a number. He says, good luck. If you're looking for spirituality, check it out. When I got to Israel, a year and a half later, I found that little tzedel, and it said Hadar HaTorah on it, which was Lubavitch's BT yeshiva on Ocean Parkway. So I said, look, it was either the Hare Krishna or Lubavitch that almost got me.
So you're searching. You are searching, obviously.
Well, again, I tend to be long-winded, but the idea is that in 1973, 1963, yeah, right after a few months after bar mitzvah, John F. Kennedy was assassinated. November 22nd,
Right. 1963.
1963, and I was shocked. And it happened on a Friday. It was a few months after my bar mitzvah. I wasn't interested really to continue with anything after that, but I went to shul that night just because it was so upsetting. And from that time on, really, I always had a spiritual thing going on. I was always looking for an insight. I wanted to know where God was, and it was always in my mind, and it was always in my heart. And I just didn't know how to express it, and I didn't know how to ask the questions. It's like
Right. You were lo yodea lish'ol. You didn't know what to ask even.
I have a line in one of my songs that says, "Did you come here with a question that's bothered you so long? Do you need some new direction back to where you started from?" That capsulized, where I was at.
Very
I didn't
good.
know. I didn't know. How can like I didn't grow up with it. I didn't know. So anyway, that set things in motion. And even during my, my rock and roll band days and, and all the crazy parties and everything else, I still wanted something a little bit different. I was always looking for the inside, the panemius, as we say now,
Right.
I wanted to know, what does God want from me? And at a certain point, after Valentine broke up and I went to New York with another band member, we performed in Greenwich Village after a summer of rehearsing, to great reviews. Everything was wonderful. We played at the Village Gate, if you remember that place. So Art DeLugoff's famous, Village Gate. So we had a great week. It was middle September of 1970.
Yeah.
It was before Rosh Hashanah. I double checked to make sure I didn't perform on Rosh Hashanah.
Oh, that's good.
But it was before you. But what happened was everything was great. The band looked like it was going to succeed. Monday morning, I woke up and I said, "I don't belong here," and I said goodbye to the other guys in the band. That's when everything started to really stir. And not long after that, my mother and my aunt offered me a trip to Israel. They were going for a mishpacha wedding and a bar mitzvah, whatever it was, cousins.
And you took it.
They said, "Come, you'll have a chance to take a breath, from what you're doing." So I said, "Okay, I'll go." And that was it. I got to Israel and fell in love with everything my eyes would look at. So
it's amazing. It's amazing.
Eventually, Israel captured my heart. And it wasn't long after that I was on a kibbutz, and a couple of guys that I met one evening at the kibbutz. We took a day trip down to Yerushalayim, and we're sitting in a coffee shop at Jaffa Gate, one of the the Arab coffee shops with those little shots of coffee, the really strong ones, So we're sitting there talking, and I said to one of them, I said, "Look, what am I don't know why I'm here, except that I've been told that this is the center of the universe. And I know I'm looking for spirituality. I just don't know where to look." And so one of them said, "Follow me." And they walked me, through the old city, and they dumped me in Har Zion.
To the Diaspora yeshiva.
Yeah, exactly. And I met a couple of guys, and not long after that, the Rabbi Goldstein, Zechrona Livracha, sees me standing there, and he comes over and he says, "How are you? Are you Jewish?" I said, "Well, yeah, I'm Jewish." He says, "Would you like to learn about Judaism and stay here for a little while?" It was like a Mayor Schuster approach. Are you Jewish? Do you want to learn some Jewish philosophy, et cetera, et cetera? But it works. It's the most beautiful line in the world. Are you a Jew? Would you like to learn some more about being a Jew? That's it. That's
simple as that.
That's all you need, because what it is, when you ask that simple question, "Are you a Jew?" and you say it and you ask it with sincerity, like, "I really care about you, man. Are you a Jew?" It hits the heart every time. That was Mayor Schuster's wonderful magic. It hits the heart every time.
Yeah.
People don't understand. People, if you don't mind me taking a side trip, people don't understand that Kiruv is really a lot simpler than they think. They think you have to have organizations and you have to become a Kiruv professional, right? What's a Kiruv professional? A Pasha Jew is a Kiruv professional.
Right.
And
so for those of you that don't know what Kiruv is, Kiruv means outreach, which is where you reach out to a fellow Jew and try to make them feel good about Judaism, or make them feel like there's something here for them to be learning about.
And Cholent is the great common denominator, at least for Ashkenazim, anyway. So.
Listen, I'm in Beit Shemesh here, which is Moroccan dominated, and they've got a different idea. But
they make chamen. They make, right.
All right. So let's fast forward to the music. But before we do that, I'm going to take a tangent. I want to ask you. But what I really should do is just tell everybody out there, if you're watching from Facebook, the 4 channels, Lenny Solomon English, Lenny Solomon Hebrew, Schlock Rock, or the Four Corners Project, just give us a nice comment, give us a thumbs up. If you're watching from the YouTube channel, Schlock Rock or the Four Corners Project, subscribe, leave us a nice comment. If you're watching from Twitter, at Lenny Solomon, retweet. And if you're watching from LinkedIn, we love seeing your comments. Keep it going. Also, you can go to the Four Corners Project.org and make a donation to keep us going, as they say. Keep us going. We know you love these shows, and we are going to continue doing them. Okay, enough. I did the paperwork.
Keep on keeping on, as we say.
Got to keep on keeping on. You know who says that? Steve Miller says that in a song.
Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah.
And we don't jet airliner, right? Keep on keeping on, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
that and Far Out, man.
So, okay, quick question before we get into the music, because I got questions here about some of the songs and some of your experiences, because you were breaking ground. First thing is, you mentioned all these people before, and I said I can't believe this. And this is my third question: who is more of an influence to you, the Beatles, Bob Dylan, or the Rolling Stones?
Bob Dylan.
Bob Dylan. Unbelievable. So it was his words. His words went right to your soul.
It was not only his words, and it was his delivery, because he's more poet than he is singer.
Right.
And what he did was, at least in my opinion, he created a character that was the most brilliant writer with the worst voice.
Right. Right.
And the contrast between the two is what was really jarring, about, listening to Bob Dylan. It's like it was all that nasal stuff. Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. It's like, who sings like that? We were coming out of Perry Como.
And the funny thing is that when I talked to Steve Bill about that, Steve Bill, also a guitar player, one of my producers, and he says that Bob Dylan is the greatest philosopher writer ever.
Yeah, I mean, in the pop music world, of course, he's not Robert Frost, but his influences, include the Robert Frosts of poet history, and great writers. I mean, Bob is a very, very astute, very well read, very accomplished student of poetry and great American songwriters.
Wow. Okay, so that was a very interesting answer. I thought you were going to say the Beatles. I would have put money on the Beatles.
The Beatles gave me a start, playing "She Loves You," and she was just 17, and I wrote a couple of songs in that genre when I was 14 already. One song called "Forever and a Day." I can't even remember the words to it anymore, but was it "Forever and a Day"? Do you really want it that way? I don't know. It was like some really corny lyric, but it was all part of that Beatles influence. But when I heard Dylan and the band, who was his backup band for a number of years, the first album was called Music from Big Pink, and that was it. It blew me away.
Wow! So there it is. Okay, so now you are getting, as they would say in the business, you're feeling more Jewish, or it's Paul Simon and feeling Jewish. You're feeling right, and you start.
It's called the It Factor. I was feeling it.
Okay, so Shmuel Ramres chipes in, one of my favorite alto rockers. Here we go. Shmuel Ramres, my associate producer, Judy Hertzfeld from Clifton, New Jersey, writes, loving this interview. And Nostalgic Hafakot writes, wow, Avraham Rosenblum, the rock and roller. So there we go, where people are commenting. I don't know if you could see the screen, but they are commenting on the right side. I don't know if you could see.
I'll watch the reruns.
Right. But, so anyway, okay. So, all right. Let's talk about a couple of things. So you start the band. You get together with the guys. You and you're learning. And as I always tell people, when I write, input breeds output, meaning the more I learn, the more I write, the more I get inspired. Was that the same thing with you? Was the learning inspiring you to write songs?
Yes, but it depends on which order you see it. Because on one hand, I already had a developed sense of music. What happened, and it did happen organically, was that the things that I was learning, the topics I was learning, the concepts as they were seeping into my wooden head, gradually melded, or synthesized inside me. And I was writing what I thought were very authentic songs. In other words, they weren't, let's write a rock and roll song to Ana Hashem Hoshino. It was that whatever the music was, whatever the songs were, they came together in a very natural, organic way, which is what gave Diaspora Yeshiva Band its strong authenticity.
Yes, I agree. There was energy. There was an energy behind the songs, all the songs, not just. I mean, I just wrote down a list of Pitchuli, Malchutcha, Hu Yiftach, Tzadik, Hafachta, Lule Hemanti, Hakol Yoducha, all of those songs. And there was more. The one where you V'hurachum, right? There were so many of them that they had an energy to them. So you were somehow able to take your spiritual energy and combine them with those Hebrew words.
I mean, that's exactly what it was. It was all a real experience. Again, we came, all of us in the band came from different directions in music. Ben Sion came from bluegrass. He was a great bluegrass. I mean, he is still to this day a great bluegrass musician. Ruby came in from Irish music and some klezmer, and he also could rock it like nobody else on violin.
Right.
Gedalia Goldstein, had been playing. What did he tell me? He was playing like hotel lounges for a bunch of years. But Gedalia could rock it, man. I mean, Gedalia was just like Mr. All power, all arms. He was like. Was the drummer of the Muppets? What's his name?
The Animal, wasn't it?
Animal. So Gedalia had those arms. I don't know if you saw the video when we had a reunion at the Haas concert in 2014. So Gedalia, who's now very white, we rented him a set of white drums, and it was like watching like royalty with the white drums and the white beard, and he did an amazing job, especially in the song Lo Asavasena that we did. You gotta watch the video. He's absolutely gorgeous.
So I got it. Wow, that's an unbelievable story. So wait,
I know,
give me the original guys. How many were there?
The original concert that was held at Beit Ha'am in Hanukkah of 1975 was a musical troupe of like 16 people.
Oh, I see.
Which included myself, Ben Sion, Moshe Shore, Rabbi Shimon Green, a piano player named Beryl Glazer. Moshe Shore's wife was playing violin behind the curtain because of tznius. So Shoshana was like, playing violin. That's where they met. They got married after that. Who else was? Oh, Chaim David. Chaim David was in that show also with the musical partner.
Wow.
And C. Miller. They were writing songs together. A guy named Amram Cohen was playing bass and trumpet. Who else was there? Yochanan Letterman was the original drummer. He's a French Baal Tshuva, that brilliant, also a brilliant scholar, and also has written books. Who else was there? I don't know, a bunch of other guys. It was an amazing event. It sold out Beit Ha'am. And from there, we continued, but I wanted to trim the band down into a workable 5 or 6 piece band, so we could tour. Right. And so the band eventually solidified. Gedalia showed up after that point, but it was me, Simcha Abramson, of course, was in that show too. Simcha was our sax player and our clarinet player. So Simcha and me and Sion. Originally, Moshe Shur was in the first formation of the band. Then he became a Hillel director and left the band. But he left us a couple of really nice songs that you might have heard about. One of them was If there was Hashem B'Simcha, and
I forgot about that
one. So
Yes.
so
Ivdu et
Mickey,
Hashem and Hafachta. Probably Hafachta is the most covered song in Jewish rock and roll history, I would say. So many
I think,
bands have recorded it.
and I think they all do it like we do, which is that every time they do it, it comes out different. that's and listen. Truth is, a good niggin, a good song, no matter how you want to lay it down, it's going to remain a good song, and the energy is going to be there. So anyway, so that's more or less the story.
Wow, amazing. Now wait,
You know,
I just got to tell you, Yona Lloyd says Diaspora was my first concert, and playing Hafachta, the Hafachta lead, helped me pass Lenny's audition in 1985, so I owe you my career. Question, what was the first Jewish song that you wrote? What was the first Jewish song that you wrote?
hang on. I just happen to have a guitar here.
Oh, that's
So,
surprising, considering I see around 8 guitars behind you.
at least. Anyway, so here's the first Jewish song I wrote.
Wow.
Shabbat Shalom. It's nice to be at home. Shabbat Shalom. It's nice to be at home. Anyway, I wrote that for my parents because after all the things that I'd been into over the years, I was the hippie and the Buddhist and but not a nudist, but a Buddhist. And I think they were a little bit mistrusting of the fact that now I was a full-blown Baal Tshuva and I was keeping kosher and Shabbos and tzitzis and all that.
Right.
So they weren't quite, they didn't quite trust, the situation. And when I wrote that song, I sang it for them over the telephone one Sunday after a Shabbos. And that was it. I sold them on the fact that what I was doing was like really real, and it was going to be something I would do for the rest of my life.
Amazing. I never knew the background to that song. That's I remember seeing a video of you guys performing that. It's funny. Oh my God. Wow,
but my favorite song of all the songs I've written is Lule Hemanti.
Oh, I love that song.
Still my favorite. Liros B'tuv Hashem. Liros B'tuv Hashem. Be'eretz Chaim. Lule Hemanti. Come on, everybody, sing along. Liros B'tuv Hashem. Liros B'tuv Hashem. Be'eretz Chaim. Let's do the chorus one time, okay?
You got it.
Kavei El Hashem, Chazak v'yametz libecho, Chazak v'yametz libecho, Kavei El Hashem, Kavei El Hashem, Chazak v'yametz libecho, Chazak v'yametz libecho, the Kavei El Hashem.
That's unbelievable. Okay, so we're already 33 minutes into a 30-minute interview, so obviously we're going a little bit longer if you have the time.
Can I tell you real quick?
Yeah.
Lule Monty is also a very real song. It was written during the Yom Kippur War. My wife and I were sitting in our apartment in Sanhedrin Merchevet. The shades were closed. You couldn't go outside and smoke a cigarette if you smoked in those days. And we I was looking for something meaningful, and we came across I think it's in Tehillim Mem Yud Pasuk Yud Tes, if I'm remembering.
Right.
And I started to write a melody for it, and my wife said, change that part a little bit. Anyway, so Lule Monty was born that night, and that's the story behind it.
Fantastic story. Fantastic. Okay, so give us quickly 3 top, let's call it your top 3 diaspora moments in terms of concerts. I have some in mind, but what were the 3 things that stick out? And it could be television, it could be It
was really about the audiences that we got to play in front of. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the people. You want it's not
I
the
know.
TV shows. It's not it's not the stuff with the bright lights. It's really just about your connection to the audience and feeling their appreciation. And when you do, you give them even more of yourself. Because that's business, if you will. But that's what it's all about.
But what about the
So
Hasidic Song Festival and getting on television and doing that whole thing for Israeli TV?
So again, the TV was secondary, but that is one of the big moments. Obviously, the first big moment is our first show that we did on our first tour at the Roosevelt Hotel, sponsored by La Difference. I'm sure you remember,
Sure.
and Murray Wilson of Alav Shalom. And that night we played in the ballroom of the Roosevelt Hotel. I think it was a Sunday night. Oh no, it was a Thursday night. Yeah, and Shlomo was on the bill with us. And
Right.
so Shlomo was actually our opening act, which was ridiculous because Shlomo was a Gadol anyway. But I think,
Right.
right, but we got to and some of the guys in the band hopped in with Shlomo as the opening act because they were close to him, from Modi'in and from the House of Love and Prayer. Anyway, so that was a great show. It really we broke the ice. America was ready for us now, and that was one. The second big moment was the Hasidic Festival, the first one in 1977. Absolutely, with it was Hu Yiftach Libeinu, and then it snowballed into the next year. We came back with Malchusko.
Right.
So
Right.
it was like a double header. I mean, we smacked it out of the park. Both of those were #1 songs in the festival.
That's fantastic.
So that was that. And I think our third big moment was we were playing in Cincinnati on the night that I think it was Begin and Sadat declared that they were going into a peace treaty.
Yeah.
And that show was we got so happy and so high from the situation. It was unforgettable. It was like the fulfillment of a dream, the music and everything. Look, whatever happened afterwards, is politics. But as far as the feeling is concerned, it was unreal.
Tell us a little bit about the Saturday night King David's cavern or tomb, whatever it was, where you guys used to play every Saturday night.
Yeah, it was the King David's tomb inside the courtyard there.
Yeah.
And it really, that also kind of grew organically because some of us were playing at weddings, that were happening on Har Zion. And, we're drinking a lot of wine and having a great time. And so gradually what happened was, a jam situation turned into, that first concert and then, the smaller band subsequently. And then we just kept jamming and the word got out. And next thing we knew, there were like hundreds and hundreds of kids and tourists and students. And on some Motzi Shabbos during the summer, we would have as many as 800 people packed into Kever David.
Did Rabbi Goldstein understand what was going on? And did he appreciate the band?
The answer is yes, because he saw the effect that music and because we were good musicians in the band and we knew how to talk to people too, so we saw that we were sincere about what we were doing. Look, he always wanted us to learn more. I'm not gonna say that
right.
It was music first and learning second. It was never that, and he always emphasized, not that I necessarily got it together, right? But the idea was, you're a Ben Torah first and you're a musician second, and the premise is correct.
Right, but in the meantime, what he must have realized that from that first question where he asked you, "Are you a Jew?" and look what came out of that. It's unbelievable.
Yep.
So here we are. We've done 39 minutes, and I must say, I want to get to what are you doing now. First thing is, I didn't even talk to you about how many albums you released. Some of them are live albums. You have a lot of live albums, right? Or
the only live album is called Live from King David's Tomb.
Ah,
and
right.
it was a live studio audience. We took friends of ours from the yeshiva, and so all that clapping that you're hearing is not actually in Kever David, but the
It's
energy was
canned.
Kever. But the energy, well, not canned. It was live
It was live
potching.
at the time, but it was just in the studio. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
that's right. But the energy was very much the same energy as the video that we did, on the roof of Kever David. So.
And okay, so and the other albums that you've put out, I mean, you first thing is you went solo. You have a solo career at this point.
So I have, let's see, the first album I did solo was called Hoshino, which was a little bit over the top. I think I tried to schmaltz it up a little too much, but there are a couple good songs on there. Tashmiani is a really beautiful song. A few other things on there. Minishara Makalu, that was taken from Avraham. It's also a beautiful song. So that was my first solo. The next one I did was Jerusalem is Calling a number of years later.
I remember that one. Yep. Yeah.
That album I'm very proud of because it really
beautiful
came out
album.
great.
Beautiful album. Great
After,
stuff.
The next thing that came out actually was my son Mo produced the Diaspora collection, greatest hits double CD. And then after that, a few years later, I put out an album called Kedim, where Mo and I were co-producers. He was my drummer for a bunch of years too, great drummer. And what happened after that? I think that's pretty much my discography. The rest is live shows and some videos here and there.
It's amazing. What a career. And I must say that you are the first person not to be interviewed that is not in the Schlock Rock Hall of Fame, because the truth is you are in the Jewish Rock Hall of Fame. If there was a Jewish Rock Hall of Fame, you would be the first inductee. I mean, there's no question. Yeah, I know Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach of blessed memory was, but he was different. He was more Hasiди. You started the rock industry. I would put you guys, then I would put Magama Duo.
Correct.
In there, and I would 100%. Put Safam I would put in there, and these were all influences of mine as I'm growing up and I'm writing songs.
Don't forget Piamento.
Oh, well, no, that's right.
And Mo Antelis and all those guys.
Yes,
there were a couple bands in Crown Heights. There was Rava Mehemna.
Yes, I remember them. I heard their disc. Now, also, I went to see Judea at Brooklyn College at their debut.
Right. Yeah. Rachmil Bigun's attempted a rock band.
But I must tell you, there was a great album. I love that album. Everybody who grew up with that album loves that album. Yeah, but it was 10 years ahead of its time. It somehow didn't sell. I don't know. Maybe it did sell.
Was Gershon on there? Was Verobo on that one?
Verobo was on that one. Yeah. Jonathan Rimberg was on that one.
Yeah. Good one. Yeah. Yeah, but you know what? To put a band together, you can't force a band together. That I will say. Bands really come together in a very organic way. A very natural way. So but it's a great album. But I have my ego about rock bands.
No, look, it's true. Now, is there any? Oh, I'm going to ask you this off the cuff. You don't even have to answer it. Is there any Jewish rock band today? Current, not that you like, that says something to you? Is there anybody out there?
There are individual artists, that I like a lot. Most of them are in Israel. You've got your Cardooners. You've got what's his name, Yonathan Rizal and his brother Aaron Rizal.
Yeah.
You've got. Well, you remember Yidel Glanz? He was also one of my favorite, Latin, original energy all the way. My old buddy Yitzchak Atias, who now plays percussion for Shlomo Katz. Shlomo Katz is a tremendous person that I have great love and affection for. Yeah. My old buddy Jerry Katz was Yidel
Katz and Revel Sheva. Yeah.
Right. He's been rocking it for years, and now there's a whole new crop of Israeli BTs like Yishai Ribo. I mean, the brilliance.
Yishai Ribo, of course, has crossed into entire Israel, not just
right. And there's a number of them that are part of this circle of Israeli BTs that are brilliant beyond anything I could have imagined. I'm just so in awe of some of the things that I've seen and heard. And Shuli Rand also. I mean, what an amazing performer! Amazing.
It's,
So all that's in Israel. Very little is here. Unfortunately, the wedding bands is still what dominates things over here.
right. The wedding bands dominate. Well, first thing is the wedding bands in Israel are also a different. It's an incredible scene. The wedding bands in Israel, they're all tight. They're all very well rehearsed. They have this annoying habit for me of putting in secular songs in between, going from one song to the next, which is interesting. And I think it's kind of transferred over to America. But in America, the wedding scene dominates also.
I mean, look, over here, Jewish music is about making a buck. Unfortunately, again, then nobody.
I think that's here too. That's here.
But there's more latitude over there for being original and for really kicking it. There's much more latitude there. Over here, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, that over here, the big thing about the wedding bands is just they have to be like excruciatingly loud.
So I'm going to ask you a question. We talked about this before we went on the air, which is the Traveling Wilburys were this group of rock and rollers that came together and put out an album. Would you like to see a Jewish rock and roll all-star band of Jewish rockers coming together, going into the studio and putting out an album?
Unequivocally, yes. It's something that I've dreamed about for many years, which is a Jewish rock all-star event of some sort, whether it's for a charity or whether it's, to popularize Rabbi Nachman of Breslov or whatever it may be. But that's absolutely something that I think is very necessary and would be a tremendous curative tool. If a nucleus of people get together to make it happen, it would talk to the world.
Wow. So I agree with you. I think I would love it. Maybe one day we'll put together a bunch of guys. We'll all go in and we'll do it. But it's got to be this, exactly what you say. It's got to be this organic studio experience. I want to close by telling you the story that I watched where Paul McCartney was asked about his relationship with John Lennon. And he said, everybody says we were enemies. And he says, we were friends. We were great friends. Don't listen to what they say. He said, but I'll tell you one thing. We would go into the studio and 3 hours later, there was a song.
Right. And well, there's a whole big thing coming out about the Beatles, right?
Yes.
Get Back. It's going to be, I think, like 60 hours of behind the scenes Beatles stuff. And they were all friends. And if not for the British tabloids, they tried to make everything into a smear campaign, which they're so good at. People knew they were wonderful friends. They were childhood friends.
Right. Now, I'm not going to say that fame doesn't bring you to different places, and maybe every band has to break up after a while because you get on each other's nerves. It's normal. I think. But
well, listen, lest I overstate everything here because I'm still a rock and roller at heart, and and I've been in quote unquote show business since I'm 13 years old. But the truth of the matter is, like I said earlier, it's really all about people. At the end of the day, it's not your ego, it's not your fame,
right.
It's not the bright lights. It's how did you leave the world a little bit better with a few more smiles in it than before you came up on stage. At the end, and the mitzvah that we have as Jews is pretty obvious. Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha, and make everybody else feel. What else is there?
And that's the best way to end our interview. I want to. First thing is, I want to thank you for coming on. Oh, mystery guest. Oh, the Godfather of Jewish rock and roll, Avraham Rosenblum. It's been a pleasure to have you. I want to say Lenny. That this show has been for the refuah shlema of Tzvi, Chanoch ben Leah, and everybody else who's sick. This show is for you, and may Hashem give you all complete refuah shlema. And I want to see you all tomorrow night for show number 156. We'll be back to it.
Let me have the last word. Lenny, you
are
incredible. You are a one of a kind. You have made an impression on Klal Yisrael through your music, and I give you the biggest kol hakavod in the world.
I mean, thank you very much. Well, I appreciate that. But remember, you're you're one of my big influences. So
Thank you. I appreciate it, and thanks for having me on your show. I really
it's a
appreciate
pleasure. And everybody, tomorrow night, Lenny Solomon Live, show number 156. And we thank you guys and keep on schlocking. Have a great day.
Take care, everybody.